Veena from Pattern Cake, the channel that's about baking and much more. A warm welcome to my channel. With Christmas just a month away, it's time for me to get going with my series of Christmas recipes for this season. My first recipe is for perhaps the easiest Christmas sweet. Melt in the mouth delicious coconut candy. Also called coconut toffee, it needs just a handful of ingredients, and unlike milk toffee or milk creams that need loads of patience and time to prepare, this Christmas treat needs barely 25 to 30 minutes of cooking time. My recipe may be lower on sugar as compared to many other recipes for this sweet, but it will be the tastiest coconut candy you could have tasted. I can assure you of that. My recipe has the right balance of the taste of coconut, sugar and milk. So now let's start making delicious Goan coconut candy right now at Pattern Cake. Here are a few of the main ingredients. We'll need fresh grated coconut, just the white part of the coconut kernel. Sugar, I've ground it to reduce the cooking time. And milk powder and milk for a richer flavor. In addition, we'll need some grated almonds, vanilla extract, food colors, and a tiny amount of ghee or butter. This is one of those sweets for which you have to keep everything, including the pan you will be setting it in, ready right at the start. Once you start making the candy, you can't stop to take care of anything else, okay? Here I have 1 tablespoon of ghee heating on a medium-low flame. In place of ghee, you could use butter. Now let's add in 2.5 cups of grated fresh coconut. That's 250 grams. And roast it with continuous stirring for around 3 to 4 minutes to reduce some of its moisture and increase its shelf life a bit. A non-stick pan is best for this recipe. But if you choose to use a kadai or a wok or any other pot, make sure it's a thick-walled one. We don't want the coconut to get burnt or even change color. I'll now let this cool and then grind it just for a few seconds in my mixer grinder. We don't want to grind it to a paste. We just want to reduce the size of the grated or shredded coconut. Here's the lightly ground coconut. I've not turned on the stove as yet, but to the same pan we used earlier, I'll add half a cup of milk powder and 3/4 cup of milk, pouring in just a little at a time as we stir the mix well till no lumps of the milk powder remain. Let's add in the sugar. I measured 1.25 cups of granulated sugar first and then ground it to a powder. The sugar weighed 260 grams. Let's dissolve this in the milk and then stir in a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. We'll now turn on the stove and bring the sweetened milk to a boil with the flame on medium. But once it starts boiling, we'll reduce the heat to low or medium-low and keep it that way till we take the candy off the stove. We'll stir this continuously for the next 2 to 3 minutes till it thickens slightly and its consistency is a little thinner than condensed milk. But we have to take care to see it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan and start browning. It's now time to add in the ground coconut. We'll mix everything well and continue cooking the mixture, stirring continuously. When the mixture looks like it will soon come together, add in 3 tablespoons of grated almonds, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and half a tablespoon of ghee or butter. If you want to make the candy in a single color, You could add the food color too at this stage. Continue stirring the mix for 2 to 3 minutes more. By now, the candy mixture will leave the sides of the pan and come together as a soft, sticky mass. Immediately turn off the heat. From this stage onwards, you have to work very fast because the coconut candy sets rapidly. If you're going to make multicolored coconut candy like I'm making today, you'll have to work even faster. I'll now divide the mixture into 3 parts. Another sign that the mixture doesn't need to be cooked any further is that the separated parts won't spread and combine to form a single mass again. That's even if you just divide it into 2 parts. I'll color 1 part pink, the second green, and leave the third one uncolored. I'll set this part aside. Always add food colors carefully and in tiny quantities. Here's the 7-inch square pan I had prepared right at the start. I lined it with parchment paper and greased the bottom well with ghee. Like I mentioned earlier, if you want to make multicolored candy, you'll have to work with speed as you randomly position spoonfuls of the mixture from each of the 3 bowls in the pan. There'll be no time to be fussy about the placement of the different colors. Just focus on speed. What you'll have eventually will be a mottled or marbled pattern like this. Smoothen the top of the mixture using a greased spatula, pressing the candy mixture down firmly at the same time. For a better finish, finally smoothen the top with a piece of parchment paper smeared with ghee. That was the only thing I forgot to keep ready right at the start when I was organizing all the ingredients and other stuff I would need for this recipe. So I ended up skipping this final step. This step is not essential where the taste of the coconut candy is concerned, but it would enhance the look of the final product. It's the thin coating of ghee or butter on the surface of the coconut candy that gives it that more polished look. Like I said, the coconut candy sets in minutes, and for cleaner cuts, you have to cut it before it cools completely. After around 20 minutes, the coconut candy has firmed up considerably and is still a little warm. So I'll now remove it from the pan and transfer it to my chopping board. You could cut out square or diamond shapes according to your preference. Squares are easier to cut, but I'll go with the traditional diamond shapes. The problem with cutting out diamond shapes is that along with intact diamonds, you'll also end up cutting diamond fragments, which you'll then have to store separately. I'll first make only markings using a long bladed knife. Now let's cut out the individual diamond-shaped pieces. Here are some of the pieces I just cut. Let the coconut candy cool completely at room temperature for around 2 hours, after which you could store it in an airtight container. I've let the coconut candy cool for 2 hours. But before I break a piece, let me show you the underside of one. This side has a smoother surface because it was pressed against the bottom of the pan, which was greased. This is the final look you would get by smoothing the top of the candy slab with greased parchment paper. Okay, now let me show you what the texture of the coconut candy is like. It's much firmer than soft Goan dosh, but not hard. A few final tips for you now. Cook the candy on medium-low or low heat throughout and preferably in a non-stick pan. Do not overcook the candy. If you dry it too much on the stove, it will set too fast, you won't be able to make clean cuts, and the candy will be crumbly. On the other hand, if you take the candy off the stove 2 to 3 minutes earlier than at the right stage, that would be okay. The candy would just need a little more time to set properly, and you would have to wait a little longer to cut it. Take the candy mixture off the stove the moment it starts leaving the sides of the pan but is still somewhat sticky. The candy will stay good outside the fridge for around 8 to 10 days, after which it would be better to store it in the fridge. Call it coconut candy or coconut toffee, whatever you want, but you definitely, absolutely should give this tasty and easy Christmas recipe a shot, okay? And if you like my recipes, please support my channel by sharing the recipe links with your contacts. Next week, we'll make crunchy kulkuls, so stay tuned. Until we meet again, happy cooking!